All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're digging into the third chapter of J. Daniel Alejo's book, Tending the Garden. And we're going to tackle a really challenging idea. What if that internal sense of morality we all have, that compass we use to navigate life, what if it's fundamentally broken? So the chapter kicks off with this zinger of a quote, and it just gets right to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? We all have this deep-seated sense of ought, of what's right and what's wrong. But what happens when my ought crashes right into your ought? The book points out that way too often that certainty we feel leads straight to conflict, not conversation. And that brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. I mean, if we're all walking around with this internal guide, why is there just so much moral disagreement? Why does my true north seem to point in a completely different direction than yours? As we're about to see, the answer is not as simple as you'd think. So how do we make sense of this? The book is really quick to say, hey, all this disagreement doesn't mean morality is just a myth. Nope. It suggests something way more personal, and honestly, a bit more unsettling, that our internal guides, these compasses we rely on, just aren't as trustworthy as we want to believe. And here it is. This is the crucial mistake pretty much all of us make. Our moral instincts, they don't just whisper, they shout. They scream at us with this feeling of absolute certainty. And we take that powerful feeling, that sense of righteousness, and we mistake it for actual proof that we're correct. But the big takeaway here is that our gut instinct is not the same thing as being infallible. So this leads us to the main idea of the whole chapter. There's a huge difference between how strongly we feel something is right and how correct that thing actually is. The book argues these are two totally different things, and we mix them up all the time. The book breaks this down really nicely into two key ideas. First, you've got moral clarity. Think of this as the internal volume, how loud that feeling of this is right is inside your head. Then you've got moral accuracy. That's the external alignment, how well your feeling actually matches up with what's true. You can have incredibly high clarity, a deafening sense of rightness, and still be completely, totally off the mark. This quote just nails the concept perfectly, doesn't it? Passion is volume, truth is pitch. It's such a great reminder that you can be super sincere, incredibly passionate, and still be completely and utterly wrong. Just think about a little kid screaming, "That's not fair." Their moral clarity is through the roof, right? They feel that injustice with every fiber of their being. But their moral accuracy is usually pretty low because they're missing all the context. The book's point is that as adults, we don't really outgrow this. We just get way better at wrapping that same raw feeling in fancy, sophisticated justifications. Okay, so if we've established our compasses are often kind of wonky, we have to ask the next logical question, why? Why? What are the forces that are constantly bending and distorting our internal sense of right and wrong? The book gives us this amazing metaphor to think about, the keyhole. Imagine you're trying to understand an entire massive room, but all you can do is peek through the tiny keyhole. You'd see this little sliver of reality and probably make these really confident judgments about the whole space, right? But you'd be missing almost everything. According to the book, that's pretty much how we make our moral judgments. So the chapter points to three main things that warp our view. First up is formation. This is your whole backstory, your family, your culture, your traumas, the media you consume. It all shapes you. Then there's ego, which is constantly bending our sense of morality to protect our pride and justify our own comfort. It's that little voice that tells you it's okay to do something selfish because, well, you're special. And finally, there's just plain old ignorance. The simple fact that your life experience is just one tiny data point in a world of billions, yet we act like we've seen it all. This insight is so critical. A lot of the time, our moral compass isn't pointing towards some objective truth. It's pointing toward what kept us safe in the past, or what helped us fit in, or whatever we had to believe to just get through a tough time. In other words, we mistake what's familiar for what's actually virtuous. And this, right here, is where things get really dangerous. Because when we start following a broken compass without ever questioning it, we can end up defending things that are actively harmful, all while feeling completely righteous and justified. The book lays out this chilling progression of how that happens. It starts when you grow up inside some kind of broken system. Could be a family, a culture, a workplace, and you just absorb its unhealthy rules. Over time, what's broken starts to feel normal, familiar. Then you start to defend that normal as if it's a moral good. And in the final, really tragic step, the survival skills you developed because of your pain start to feel like they're actually mature wisdom. And that's the terrifying part, isn't it? A warped compass doesn't send up a warning flare. It doesn't feel broken from the inside. It feels like you're being responsible. It feels like loyalty. It feels mature. And this is how good people can end up protecting really harmful systems, totally convinced that they're doing the right and faithful thing. So, if we can't fully trust our own gut feelings, where does that leave us? Are we just totally lost? Well, this final section of the chapter explores what we're supposed to do with this really difficult realization. It's tempting to run to one of two easy but totally unhelpful escapes. On one side, you have relativism, basically just giving up and deciding there's no such thing as true north anyway, so who cares? On the other side, you've got arrogance, which is declaring that my compass, my personal feeling, is true north, and it should be the standard for everybody else. But the book suggests a third way, what it calls humble realism. This path says, yes, a real true north, an objective morality does exist, but it also humbly accepts that my personal compass is flawed and probably needs fixing. So the goal isn't to declare that I've already arrived. The goal is to commit to a lifelong process of trying to aim my life in the right direction. And it's so important to see how different this is from just copping out. Healthy humility is what fuels growth. It's the voice that says, hey, I could be wrong here, so I need to stay open to being corrected. Fake humility, on the other hand, uses the possibility of being wrong as an excuse to stop caring about what's right altogether. So this leaves us in this really inescapable tension. We absolutely have to have a moral framework to function, to build relationships, to have a society. But at the same time, we absolutely cannot trust our own feelings alone to build that framework. And what that means is we have a profound responsibility, not just to feel what's right, but to actively go out and seek correction for our compasses. And that's where the chapter leaves us with this massive, lingering question. If my internal guide is unreliable, how can I ever find a standard outside of myself to fix it? How can I ever really know if the thing that feels right truly is right? The book leaves us hanging, but that's exactly the question the next chapter promises to answer.